America first. Two words. A promise of retreat, but listen carefully. That promise is breaking. While Trump speaks of pulling back, American power keeps pushing forward. Bombs fall. Troops remain. And in Venezuela, the language of sovereignty disappears, replaced by the language of control. This is not restraint. This is expansion without a flag. Trump tells voters the world has exploited America long enough, that foreign wars drain the middle class, that it's time to come home, yet his actions tell another story. One that sounds less like the 21st century and more like 1898. What happens when a leader sells isolation but governs like an empire? Venezuela is not a side story. It is the reveal. If you want to understand where America is heading, you have to understand why America first worked and why it is now colliding with reality. Stay with me, because the promise came from real pain. The appeal of America first did not come from ideology. It came from exhaustion. For decades, working Americans watched factories close, jobs disappear, communities hollow out, free trade rewarded capital, automation rewarded efficiency, globalization punished place. At the same time, wars dragged on. Iraq, Afghanistan, conflicts with no victory, no closure, and no dividend at home. People asked a simple question: why are we paying the bill for the world? Trump answered that question directly. Too directly. He said the system was rigged, that elites benefited while ordinary families paid the cost. That borders mattered. That power should be used for Americans first. This message landed because the pain was real, and because Washington had no convincing reply. But here is the problem. Diagnosis is not strategy. Anger is not a plan. And when grievance replaces design, foreign policy becomes improvisation. To see how that improvisation turns into force, we have to go back, not to Trump, but to the ideas he resurrected. The ideas Trump revived are old, very old. They come from a time when geography was destiny, when oceans were walls, when distance meant safety. In the early republic, America feared entanglement. Washington warned against foreign ground. Jefferson spoke of peace without alliances. Then came the 19th century. Expansion westward, control southward, the belief that security came from dominance close to home. The Monroe Doctrine was born in that logic. Keep rivals out. Rule the neighborhood. Stay clear of distant wars. For its time, it worked. The world was slower. Weapons were limited. Empires were normal. But history did not freeze. Technology collapsed distance. Trade fused economies. Power stopped obeying borders. Yet Trump looks backward. He treats the past as a manual, not a warning. He imagines that pulling inward will restore strength. That hemispheric control can replace global responsibility. That force nearby is safer than commitment abroad. This is the mistake, because old strategies behave differently in new systems. And nowhere is that collision clearer than in Venezuela. What happened in Venezuela was not accidental. It was inevitable. A weak state, vast oil reserves, in strategic frustration in Washington. Trump did not invent the impulse. He accelerated it. The capture of Nicolás Maduro shattered the illusion. America first was no longer about restraint. It was about control. The justification sounded familiar. Drugs, chaos, security. But beneath the language was an older logic. If a neighbor collapses, the strong step in. This was not diplomacy. It was coercion. The message traveled fast across Latin America, across the world. If Venezuela can be run, who decides who is next? Trump framed the move as stability, as order, as necessity, but power taken is rarely power contained. This was the first open rupture. The moment rhetoric gave way to force, the moment America first stopped pretending. And it raised a harder question. not about Venezuela, but about the system that made this feel acceptable. To answer that, we have to look beneath the event, into the mechanism itself. The mechanism is not chaos. It is design. Trump's strategy follows a simple rule: control the near abroad, pressure the periphery, extract compliance. This is the Monroe Doctrine, updated but not modernized. A belief that security comes from dominance close to home. That order can be imposed, that neighbors can be managed. The 2025 National Security Strategy makes it explicit the United States will reassert hemispheric primacy, prevent hostile influence, control key assets. Migration becomes leverage, drugs become justification, energy becomes price. In this system, sovereignty is conditional. Cooperation is mandatory. Resistance invites force. The logic is clean, but it ignores reality, because dominance creates backlash. Control demands maintenance, and coercion never stays local. What begins in Venezuela does not end there. It reshapes expectations, alarms allies, invites rivals to test limits elsewhere. This is the hidden cost, the part never spoken aloud. And once this mechanism is activated, it does not stay confined to one crisis. It accelerates. Acceleration always brings exposure. The second crisis arrived quietly, then all at once. Even as Trump talked about pulling back, the map stayed crowded. Asia, Europe, the Middle East, troops did not come home. Bases stayed open. Commitments multiplied. Against China, the language hardened. Taiwan mattered. The first island chain mattered. Military overmatch mattered. In Europe, withdrawal vanished. NATO survived. 80,000 US troops remained. Because Russia did not stop. In the Middle East, restraint ended at the water's edge. Hormuz, the Red Sea, energy routes, Israel's security. America first met reality, and reality won. This was the second rupture, not dramatic like Venezuela, more dangerous because it exposed the truth. There was no retreat, only redistribution of force. The strategy promised escape from overreach. Instead, it delivered permanent tension. Pull back here, push forward there. And in that imbalance, the pressure shifted downward onto ordinary people. That pressure does not stay abstract. It lands at home. You feel it first in prices, then in shortages, then in silence on the job board. Immigration was framed as threat. Crackdown deported, but farms lost workers. Construction slowed. Hotels closed, rooms they couldn't staff. Food costs rose. Housing stalled. Everyday life got tighter. Tariffs were sold as protection. Bring jobs back. Make things again. Instead, costs climbed. Supply chains bent. Manufacturing still shrank. 50,000 jobs gone, not from globalization, but from overcorrection. And through it all, you were told this was strength. That pain was temporary. That sacrifice was patriotic. But here's the truth. You can't punish the system without hurting the people inside it. Foreign policy became domestic policy, and the bill arrived quietly in your grocery cart, your rent, your paycheck. This is where grand strategy stops being theory, where slogans touch lives. And once that happens, the consequences don't stop at borders. The world is watching closely. Allies hear the words, but they study the actions. When America talks about taking territory, trust erodes quietly, irreversibly. Europe recalculates. If guarantees are conditional, they prepare for uncertainty. Asia hedges. If commitment wavers, self-reliance accelerates. Rivals take notes. China watches the hemisphere. Russia probes the edges. Power vacuums invite pressure. This is the chain reaction, not collapse. Realignment. When rules feel optional, every actor starts improvising. trade becomes politicized, security becomes transactional, diplomacy turns brittle. Even partners begin to ask uncomfortable questions. What happens if America decides control matters more than consent? What if alliance becomes leverage? The damage is not immediate. It is cumulative, and once credibility thins, it is hard to restore. The irony is sharp. A strategy meant to simplify the world ends up making it more dangerous, because power without predictability creates anxiety everywhere. And anxiety in global politics never stays contained. It spills forward into the future. The future now splits three ways. The first path is correction. Rhetoric softens, policy adjusts, America accepts limits without abandoning leadership. Hemispheric dominance gives way to partnership. Immigration is managed, not weaponized. Trade is balanced, not bludgeoned. This path is hard. It requires restraint and humility. The second path is drift. Contradictions remain unresolved. Isolationist language. Imperial behavior. Forces used sporadically. Allies hedge quietly. Rivals test slowly. Nothing collapses, but nothing stabilizes. The third path is escalation. Control replaces consent. Territory becomes temptation. Force becomes habit. In that world, Venezuela is precedent, not exception. Costs rise, resistance hardens, and America becomes trapped not by enemies, but by its own strategy. History teaches this lesson repeatedly. Great powers fall not from weakness, but from misreading their moment. The question is not whether America has power. It does. The question is whether it can design a strategy that fits the century it is actually living in. Because systems do not forgive nostalgia, and the future will choose with or without intention. The danger is not that America has lost its strength. It hasn't. The danger is mistaking power for clarity. America first promised focus. It delivered friction. It promised restraint. It produced reach. Trump did not create this tension. He revealed it. A nation tired of overreach tried to escape history by rewinding it. But the world has moved on. You cannot run a 21st century system with 19th century instincts. You cannot demand loyalty while threatening control. And you cannot lead if no one knows what you will do next. Grand strategy is not about force. It is about coherence. Until America closes the gap between what it says and what it does, every promise will sound hollow. The choice ahead is simple but not easy. Design a strategy that fits reality, or let contradiction govern by default. If this moment feels unfinished, that's because it is. The next chapter has already begun, and the decisions made now will shape the world your future lives in. If you want to understand what comes next, don't look at slogans. Watch the structure.